What's good, family? So mash the like button, subscribe, and lick off the bell. Wow. It's listen. Times are down bad for Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn at the zone right now. I mean, there was one point in time Eddie's stable was looking. Well, Eddie's stable was the most premier in the division. Yeah, there was a time Eddie Hearn looked untouchable. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still got one of the best stables, but wow, Mikey Garcia, in my mind, they paid a load of money for him. Eddie Hearn paid a shed ton of money for Mikey Garcia. He was supposed to be one of the flag bearers. Don't forget that, people. Mikey Garcia, Eddie Hearn, from what I understand, was working for about 2 or 3 years. Don't forget, people. Mikey Garcia was with PBC. Yeah? For Errol Spence. Do you know how hard it is to nick a fighter from PBC? It basically never happens. I can't think of any fighter who's left Al Heyman PBC. Once that Al Heyman cabal gets his hands into you, you ain't going nowhere. So the fact Eddie Hearn managed to sign Mikey Garcia, which I understand was because he put his hand in his pocket, obviously. It weren't because he didn't put his hand in his pocket, was it? Think about it. No one leaves because, I'm not going to pay you no money, so you're going to leave Al Heyman. Don't think so. So, Eddie did the most for Mikey Garcia. And now look, he got beat. Now, I won't lie to you. A lot of people have been saying Mikey got schooled. I think it was a relatively close fight because the other guy, he wasn't active enough for me. He wasn't given enough. That said, Mikey gave even less. Mikey was applying pressure, which helped him massively. If Mikey wasn't coming forward, it would have been a complete whitewash. It would have been a complete shutout. But because he was coming forward and pressing the pace, even though he wasn't landing anything clean, or much clean, that's what saved Mikey Garcia. But the other guy, yeah, he probably did win, but there wasn't much in it. The other guy wasn't piecing Mikey up. So, to be honest, it could be worse. I've heard a lot of people saying, well, Mikey's finished, Mikey's shot to bits, or whatever. I don't see that. I mean, the rematch will be the proof, if that makes sense. If, for example, Mikey does the rematch and he just looked unbothered. And I hate to say it, but Mikey Garcia looked like the typical he looked like the typical spoilt 2021 DAZN money fighter. He looked just like Ryan Garcia as such. Well, I'm rich anyway. Who really cares? Yeah? Who really cares anymore? And this seems to be a trend in boxing. Yes, Mikey Garcia hasn't been active, but again, whose fault's that? Oops. We know DAZN have been putting cards on. We know Eddie Hearn would love to have big American fights. So it's not because it's not been available. This seems to be a trend. Number one, fighters aren't active. Number two, when they are active, they ain't bothered. There's no oomph. More or less, I remember the days where it used to be quite a rarity for a top fighter not to turn up. These days, the odds are top fighters won't turn up. Isn't it? It's true though. More than half of the time, top fighters are finding a way not to put no effort in. There's very little passion left, or very little pride, is there? I mean, even at the end, Mikey Garcia was almost celebrating like he thought he won, which is fair enough. It wasn't a complete shutout where he should have known he lost, but come on, man. When you think about Robert Garcia is one of the best trainers and was a former world champion himself. Why wasn't he saying, Mikey, let's get the stoppage? Mikey, let's ramp it up now. He must have been seeing what we were seeing, no? Because it was clear Mikey wasn't dominating. Apart from coming forward, which I give him credit for, but apart from that, that was all he was doing. I'm sorry, but you can't win a fight just by stepping forward. Maybe the other guy was just better. Maybe the Spanish guy was just making Mikey look bad. Because Mikey was throwing, to be fair. But that guy was slippery. And that's why I'm not sure Eddie Hearn hasn't mentioned the rematch. And to be honest, I don't blame him. Why? Because guess what? When you've invested $10 million in this Mexican star as such, do you really want your Mexican star to get whooped again? Is that the risk he wants to take? Does Eddie Hearn want to gamble that this was a bad day? Or was it the other man making him look bad? We don't know. And the fact for me, Eddie Hearn normally makes rematches quite clear after shock losses. But I didn't hear him mention nothing about no rematch. And again, I can't blame him. After putting that money, after investing that money, and it all going up in smoke, up in flames. If I was him, I'd get Mikey fighting another bum, or a different bum, and then putting him into a big fight. Now, allegedly, or in fact, factually, Mikey Garcia has fought once a year for the last 7 years. He's fought only 7 times since 2014. Shocking. But it's not unusual these days. Look at Tank Davis. Tank Davis, prime of his life. At best, fighting once a year. It's this new 2021 DAZN money, as such, spoilt attitude. Now, to be fair to Tank, at least when he gets in the ring, he does the business. But for how long? I couldn't tell you. For how long will Tank do the business? Not being funny, his last fight, Floyd had to get in there and intervene, kind of thing. So even the most aggressive and ferocious fighters are becoming wet between the ears and moist. So I don't know what to say. I do not know what to say on this one. Apart from Mikey needs to go away. Now, I don't think he needs to retire immediately, but he needs to go away and have a serious look at himself, for sure. And his team, to be honest. This team, Robert Garcia, I hate to say it, but it's a fact. Robert Garcia reminded me a bit like Rob McCrappen. And I'm disappointed because I used to give, well, I still do, but I hold Robert Garcia, not on a pedestal, but I rate him highly in terms of trainer. And the fact he weren't saying much, what's that about? That's your brother at the end of the day. Why lie to him? You should have been telling him, Mikey, if you got anything left, turn it on now. Because to be fair, Mikey didn't look gassed. It was almost like he was happy just to get out there and go through the rounds, and I don't know what he was thinking, to be honest. And it's fair enough, well, it's not fair enough, but it's one thing a fighter being confused, or it's one thing a fighter being arrogant, but that's where trainers are supposed to come in. A trainer is supposed to intervene. Mikey, you're taking the Michael here. Mikey, you're slacking. Mikey, you're not on your job. Mikey. But it's almost like these days, trainers encourage the bad habits, if that makes sense. You've got AJ in a fight with Usyk, and Rob McCrappen's encouraging him to back off. Yeah, light on the feet. Stay behind the jab. It's mental. And then you got Mikey Garcia versus this dude, the Spanish Don. And I didn't hear nothing out of Robert Garcia the whole night, to be honest. Nothing to any effect anyway. Didn't hear no passion. Didn't hear no oomph. He was just happy to go along to get along himself. It's almost as if, I believe Mikey Garcia got paid a few million for that fight. Can you believe that? Mikey Garcia got paid a few million for that fight. To us normal people, yeah? To us normal people, that kind of money that's lottery. That's life-changing money. And Mikey Garcia walked out of that ring with life-changing lottery money for what? For a wet fart performance. It's shocking. It really is. I don't care what no one says no more. I do believe there's a strong causation between boxing purses and wet fart performances. There's no pride. It's almost taken as a given now. I'm going to get paid multi-millions and do naffle in the ring. In my opinion, to earn millions, you should be a wrecking ball. Now, that doesn't mean KOs, but it means you're coming to be serious. Bear in mind, people, you're making life-changing and lottery money every time you get in there. The least you can do is fight like you're making life-changing money. It's almost like, imagine, let's say you're a car mechanic, and someone tells you, alright, it's Monday today, tomorrow Tuesday, when you go into work, we're going to pay you $3 million for the same work that you were doing yesterday for $200. Imagine going into that imagine going into that Tuesday, yeah, where you know you're going to be a millionaire at the end of it, and doing a subpar job. Imagine that though, imagine it. So you're working and you're putting in average work. Then you find out you're making multi-millions and you just think, well, you know what? I'm going to do a worse job than I normally would. It's amazing. And I guess what happens is over time, these fighters, they get used to it. It becomes normal to them. But I'm telling you, that's why the more I learn about this kind of stuff, people criticise Dana White, but guess what? He keeps his fighters hungry. And I'm afraid to say, UFC wouldn't work, or doesn't work without hungry fighters. If UFC was full of these Ryan Garcia, Mikey Garcia looking asses, it wouldn't work, would it? It wouldn't work. Thankfully, look at Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley was kicked out of there quickly. He lost and was kicked out because he had no fire left, did he? He had no fire left in that fight against Usman, and he didn't regain any fire ever since. So rightfully so, he was kicked out and he's no longer a champion. In boxing, these guys hang around the place, don't they? Because for me, Mikey Garcia's performance looks just similar to Tyron Woodley's did. Wet and just moist looking. Difference is, these guys hang around in boxing. And for some reason, guess what? Next time Mikey Garcia fights, it's still going to be making multi-million dollars. UFC champions lose once, like Tyron Woodley did. Tyron Woodley lost to Usman, and he ain't made no money ever since. He was barely making money when he was champion. And that's how it needs to be, I'm afraid. Because we've tried it the other way now. We now know, and that's why, in a way, NBA people get paid a lot of money, yeah, but they have to actually work a bit for theirs. They play 3 times a week, 2 times a week. Boxers get paid somewhat similar money, and they've only got to do, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, well, YB, to be fair to Mikey, he's fighting two more times this week. Boxers have to fight, at best, twice per year. And on them 2 occasions, on them 2 days, you can't be bothered to turn up. You can't be bothered to put in your all. You can't be bothered to go over and above. You can't be bothered to put 110% in. And that's another thing. Imagine that. Imagine, yeah, being paid millions of dollars for 1 day's work. And that's the only day's work you have to do. Imagine it. Imagine someone telling you, YB, next time you do imagine being told, YB, this year you only have to work 2 days, and we're going to pay you millions of dollars. And imagine going in for them 2 days of work, and slacking off. Isn't that crazy? You've got 2 days a year to work. Not even 2 days, is it? You've got 40 minutes. 40 minutes twice a year. You've got to put some effort in. And you can't even get yourself up for that. I'm sorry, it's not acceptable. It's not. It's really not. Not acceptable at all. So yeah, Mikey needs to go away and either retire or pull his finger at his backside and show some passion. Show some pride. I remember the days when, and I'm not saying top fighters never lost, but what I am saying is, I remember the days when there used to be pride. People would say, or champions or top level boxers would say, this guy ain't good enough to lace my boots. And they'd act accordingly. They'd box with that level of arrogance. I mean, even watch Roy Jones versus James Toney. That wasn't one bum versus a great fighter. That was 2 great fighters. But even so, Roy Jones in that fight believed James Toney was a bum, and he treated him that way. If that makes sense. He went in there and punked him. He pulled off a slick. I remember seeing it. Roy Jones pulled off a slick move. James Toney tried it and got knocked down or something like that. That just showed me that that's the levels they was operating on. Even with even being opposed by top fighters. They had this level of arrogance. I'm going to treat you with no respect and make sure you know your place. These days, anyone can have a go on these top guys. That's why you've got AJ and Usyk. Cruiserweights can come up and have a go. Can you imagine? I know people argue that Holyfield was a cruiserweight. I'm sorry, I don't believe Holyfield was a cruiserweight. Yeah, not without what do they call it? Listen, bottom line, people. Holyfield was a cruiserweight before Vada. Yeah, if Holyfield was around in Vada times, he'd be a cruiserweight at best, at heaviest. He ain't no heavyweight really. That was the juice, in my opinion. Bottom line, juiced out of his eyeballs. But so take Holyfield out of it. What do you think the heavyweights of the 90s would have done if Usyk thought he was going to pop up there? Now, even if Usyk was able to win, do you think they'd have rolled over like AJ and just accepted it? No, I believe they'd have felt disrespected. But we are where we are, and Mikey got what he deserved. Yeah, and I'm glad. And Eddie Hearn's right. Eddie Hearn was Eddie Hearn said he's glad the right result was read. Sorry, and that's true. The Spanish Don did deserve to win. No doubt. Mikey, you sloppy looking.